In this video, I'll talk about how to analyze and summarize data using the advanced ifs function. In particular, we're going to be looking at COUNTIFS, AVERAGEIFS, and SUMIFS. We're going to continue with the employee data, although I'm going to turn it into an Excel table because it allows me to type the information rather than having to scroll through the columns to select it. So I'll just click any cell, run up here to insert. We'll make this a table. It's guessing the range A1 to M101. That sounds good. My table has headers. And basically I'm going to give it a name rather than table 1. I'll just call it data and hit enter. So now let's run over and talk about COUNTIFS. First I'm going to turn off all these filters that get turned on. Let's shrink up some of the columns. Now you should be familiar with the count function. So for instance, if I just wanted to count all of the numeric values in a particular column. Now I am just going to type the word data, and notice because I made it a table, I have this data table, and then with the square bracket I can see all of the columns that are available in that table. So for instance, if I just want to count all of the employees, I could just count the column data ID and the fact that there's 100 of them. Now what COUNTIFS is going to do is I'm only going to count the employees when they meet a certain criteria. So in this example, I'm saying how many of my employees are from Austin. So I'm still going to do a count, but only count if it meets the criteria that they're from Austin. So I will type equal, and now we're going to be typing COUNTIFS with an S. And how it works is it goes, well, okay, what's our criteria range? Where am I going to be looking for this criteria? And then the second thing it wants is, what is the criteria I am looking for? So the criteria range is going to be in our table, and square bracket, what column is are we going to be looking for the word Austin? Well, it's going to be the location column, square bracket, and then comma. Okay, well, if that's where I'm looking, what am I looking for? And right here I'll click on Austin, and basically we're done. That's COUNTIFS. We're looking for one criteria, Austin, and it's in the data, it's the location column. I'll close that up and hit enter, and we have 57 employees from Austin. Now the beauty of COUNTIFS and AVERAGEIFS and SUMIFS is we can actually have more than one criteria. We can have multiple criteria. So now, for example, I don't want just how many employees from Austin. I want to know how many full-time employees from Austin. And the full-time is a value that's indicated in the job status column. So I have full-time, part-time, and I think there's a contractor further down here, right? So how many full-time employees are from Austin? So I only want to count records that meet both of those conditions. So when I'm typing it over here, I will type equal COUNTIFS parenthesis. Okay, criteria range. Here we go again. So I give it the table name, square bracket, and we'll start with the location, square bracket, and what criteria am I looking for in the location column? Well, I'm looking for Austin. All right, comma, criteria range 2. Well, that's going to be the job status. So again, I type the table name, square bracket, and I'm going to be the job. It's going to be the job status column, square bracket, and then comma, what's the criteria I'm looking for in that column? It's the fact that they're full-time. And I'm done. But by the way, I can have more than 2 criteria. Here's criteria range 3, ... I could continue. But we're done with just the 2. And now when I hit enter, there's 49 full-time employees from Austin. Now, AVERAGEIFS and SUMIFS will work almost exactly the same, except they have the addition of one more parameter that we need to fill in. So in this example, I want to take the average salary of employees that chose a particular health plan. So I will hit AVERAGEIFS with an S, and the first thing it's asking for is, okay, what range am I going to take an average of? So that's going to be the annual salary. I want to take an average of the annual salary for all the people who choose HMOF. So type my table name, square bracket, and annual salary is the column that I'm going to take an average of, comma, what's my criteria range? Well, this time it's the health plan column. That's the criteria range. What's the criteria I'm looking for? HMOF. So again, type data, square bracket, it's the health plan, square bracket, and then comma, what's the criteria I'm looking for? HMOF right here in cell P12. So basically, I only have one criteria, the fact that they've chosen this health plan, and then I have one column that I'm taking an average of, that I calculate the average in. So that's the average salary for people who choose HMOF. Continuing on, what if I have more than one criteria? I want to take an average salary of people who've chosen that health plan, but have greater than 3 years of service. Now, actually, I think I'm going to change that criteria because looking at my data, I think everybody has more than 3 years, so I'll probably just get the same number. Let's change it to more than 8 years of service, and I'll just fix this sentence here to match, just to be consistent. Okay, here we go. Equal average ifs. And now again, what range am I going to take an average of? Well, that will be the annual salary, square bracket. What criteria range one where am I looking? We're going to be looking in the data table, square bracket, and at the health plan, square bracket. And then what's the criteria I'm looking for in that column? Well, the fact that it's HMOF. I'm not done. Criteria range 2, what's the second criteria? That's the fact that the years of service is greater than 8. So the criteria range is going to be again in the data, and it's years of service. And then what's the criteria for the years of service? It's going to be the fact that it's greater than 8, P16. So I'll close that up, and now we'll hopefully end up with a different average salary for people who have greater than 8 years of service versus everybody. Actually, that does seem kind of odd that when you limit it to a larger years of service, your salary goes down. But if I run over here and filter the data on just the HMOF and then look through the years of service, actually the people with the higher salaries are at least in this case, have 6 years of service. So there's a few people with, here's one with 125 with only 6. So actually I could see where the salary would go down. Anyway, that's not that important. The next thing I want to point out though with these is notice we say greater than 8 and we just refer to that cell. If you don't refer to the cell in order to actually type greater than 8, this is the one time you would put kind of numeric values in quotes. Even though it's not really a numeric value, it's an expression. When we say greater than 8, that needs to be in quotes. So if we're going to hard code a number into this function, remember to put the greater than 8 in quotes, and then in this case we'll get the same value. So now let's move on to the SUMIFS, and they will be very similar to AVERAGEIFS. And that the first thing I have to do is, well, what am I summing? And then what is my criteria? So in this case, I want to sum the salary of all the full-time people whose salary is above 100,000. Okay, so it's going to be equal SUMIFS with an S, and my sum range. What am I summing? Well, it's again the annual salary. So I type data, and I can't hit the square bracket, and then we'll choose annual salary. And then my criteria range, it's the fact that they're full-time. So again, data, square bracket, that's in the job status, square bracket. I'm going to scoot over just a little. And then what's the criteria? It's the fact that they're full-time. So I'll click on full-time. So that's the criteria I'm looking in the job status column. The next criteria is the fact that they earn more than 100,000. So data, square bracket, that's the annual salary column, and the criteria is the fact that they're earning more than 100,000. I can click on this cell. If I were to type it, don't forget to put that in quotes, quote, greater than 100,000. But since it's right here, I'll just refer to that and we'll hit enter. So that's the sum of the salary for all the employees who are full-time with the salary greater than 100,000. Now the last couple examples we'll talk about is the fact that you can use wildcard characters. And so if I said how many employees last names begin with J, I'll change that to a J. Okay, so how many refers to a count, so I'll do a COUNTIFS with an S. And it goes, well, what's our criteria range? Again, it's in our data. And the criteria range is the last name. And what's the criteria? J star. So then I'll hit enter, and we should have 3 employees whose name begin with J. So we can use wildcard characters in our COUNTIFS. Now the last thing I'll mention is that all of these are AND conditions, meaning 2 things have to be true in order for the average, the count, or the SUMIFS to calculate. All right, well, previous we talked about OR conditions. I wanted to find out how many employees are from Austin and New Orleans, then both have greater than 85,000 annual salary. Now this gets a little trickier with using COUNTIFS, because basically what I have to do, they can only do AND conditions, so I have to add up 2 COUNTIFS. So in this case, I'll say my criteria range is the fact that these people are from Boston. That's in the location column. And the criteria is Austin. And I have a second criteria. That's that they're earning greater than 85,000. So I'll put data square bracket. We have an annual salary square bracket. And the criteria for that column is greater than 85,000. So if I hit enter, I have 15 people from Austin who meet that criteria. Well, I also want to know how many are from New Orleans. So what I have to do is basically put a plus sign. I'm going to add up 2 COUNTIFS. And in this case, now here we go with the second COUNTIF. Oh, I'll do it up here in the formula bar so it doesn't fall off. Square bracket. One more time, location. And the criteria for the location is the fact that they're from New Orleans. And one more criteria is the data, square bracket, annual salary. And the criteria for that is also greater than 85,000. So because I'm doing an OR condition, I'm basically having to add up 2 COUNTIF functions. The first one giving me my Austin employees, and the second one giving me my New Orleans employees. Now when I hit enter, I get the 24. Now in this video, I only demonstrated the COUNTIFS with an S, AVERAGEIFS with an S, and SUMIFS with an S. When you type these, you will notice there is a corresponding like SUMIF without an S. There'll be an AVERAGEIF without an S, and also COUNTIF without an S. I don't use those. The only difference between them is that they only will handle 1 criteria. Well, SUMIFS with an S will handle 1 or more. So I don't even mess with these. And if you do, they get a little confusing because the order that they want the information is a little bit different. SUMIFS with an S, the first question is, what's the range that I'm going to sum? Whereas SUMIF without the S, that's the third thing it wants. And so I just don't want to confuse myself. I only work with the ones that end with S, and if I have 1 criteria, that's fine. They handle it just fine. And if they have more than 1 criteria, well, then I have to use SUMIFS anyway, and so then I can fill out my multiple criteria. So that's it for this tutorial on the advanced if functions.